Good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on where you come from. I am here in Minneapolis, and my name is Chris Jones. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Spectra Diversity. And I should let you know right away, this will not be a Spectra Diversity sales pitch, although I am always ready and willing to talk to you about assessments. This session is based on, excuse me, frog in the throat, is based on a book that I wrote that was released last September, Powering Inclusive Cultures. And the purpose of the book was to show leaders and also those who help leaders why measurement matters in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I would like to, yes, thank you for signing in. You can certainly sign in. Feel free to share your LinkedIn information if you'd like to connect that way. That would be wonderful. Also, I'd like to start with two apologies. One apology is, I'm so sorry we had to reschedule. Rebecca has school-age children, and as school-age children tend to do, one of them shared an illness, and the whole family was down for the count. So sorry about the rescheduling. The other apology that I have for today is that I'm sorry that I did not mail the books to the two winners from last month. We had a death in my family, and mailing out the books live at my house, and so I've got behind in my personal correspondence. So sorry about that, but I do have the envelopes addressed and ready to go, and we will be giving away two books at the end of today's session. Must be present to win. So my guest today is Rebecca Dessonville. Rebecca, her company is Pearly Digital. When I talk to people that don't know the ins and outs of the tech business, I always say she's my IT person. And she says, no, Chris, I'm a front end and back end developer. So that's the real name. We provide high quality, budget conscious digital solutions for nonprofit organizations, businesses of any size. Rebecca and I, our relationship goes back quite a ways. In fact, to the formation of Spectra Diversity in 2016. She was our person that that developed all the tools that we had then, and obviously the ones that we have now. And we'll go into a little bit of how we came to know each other in a few minutes. So what we're going to do today, a little bit of education about the disparities between genders, both at work and in leadership. And as part of the education, I do have some information about laws and lawsuits and sort of the legal ins and outs related to gender. And I was thinking about, this was a brain fart just this morning, about Earth Day. It is Earth Day. And I was in fact present. I was a senior in high school when the first Earth Day happened in 1970. So you can do the math on that, figure out how old I am. And because of Earth Day, the Environmental Protection Agency was formed. The National Environmental Education Act happened. OSHA was created. The Clean Air Act came out of it, Clean Water Act, and the Endangered Species Act. So, you know, these things, and we're still working on these things. So laws change, Congress comes and goes, the parties switch around, but there is progress over time. Our rivers are no longer, bursting into flames, and air quality is better. A lot of things changed. We're going to dispel myths about men and women who are transgender. We're going to deal a little bit about men and women, and then really about half of our talk today is going to be about transgender issues. And then we're going to motivate you, hopefully, to take an active role in those gender issues. So the first thing I want to do, and I don't have my assistant today, so I'm doing this myself. I'm launching a poll. So let's see if you can do this. I define my gender as, and I just want to get a sense of who is listening to me today, to us today. And that's coming in. We have still coming in. Okay. Not everybody has responded. We're waiting for 6 people if you'd like to check in. So here we go. I'm going to end the poll now. And as expected, there were 70% women, 17% men, 4% non-binary third gender, and 8% other prefer not to answer. And we always, here, let me see if I can share these results. I think you can see those. I'm not sure because I'm not the usual poll driver. But this other prefer not to answer, when Spectra, when we do our assessments, we always include that as an option. And we don't know why people prefer not to answer. They may be concerned about the anonymity. They may just think, frankly, it's none of your business. There's a lot of different, reasons why people prefer not to answer, but we always do that. Okay, so thank you. This actually goes along the lines of what I thought was going to happen. So I think, Two-Spirit was not, done as a potential answer. And the reason that we use just this many when we're doing our surveys is because if there aren't at least 5 people in a category, people can become identifiable. And for anonymity's sake, if there are fewer than 5 people in a category, we don't share that information with our clients. So if we group a couple of categories, for example, non-binary, third gender, then we're more likely to get at least 5 people. In our little poll today, we did not have 5 people. So if this were a Spectra poll, we would just show the number of people, but we wouldn't show the other information about the people, which would be, age and race or ethnicity, things like that. So let's us continue. 5 fast facts. Okay. And this is a guessing game. I'd like you to enter your guess. Among S&P 500 companies, research found that boards were gaming diversity to please potential critics by appointing exactly 2 women to their boards. So what percentage of boards of the S&P 500 companies include exactly 2 women? Even though women are, could be 50% of the workforce. So what is your guess? Put it in the chat box. What percentage of boards include exactly 2 women? 14, 1, 57, 10, 25. I think you're going to be really surprised at this. 45. Somebody got it right. Who got it right? Somebody got it right. Boop, boop, boop. Oh, somebody got it close to right. Very good. Yeah, exactly 2 women and tokenism instead of tokenism. Let's go to the next one. Millennials. Millennials are currently 35% of the workforce, and what percentage identify as trans or non-binary? And put your guesses in for this one. The number of millennials. 10, 14, 14, 5, 4, 20, 75, 20, 40, 10. Okay, I think you're going to be surprised at this one too. 12% identify as trans or non-binary. And that is a big change, even though 12%, is still a smaller amount. It is way bigger than those that are like myself, a baby boomer. Next one, number 3, women are more likely to be hired with blind applications, which increase the likelihood that a woman would be hired by between X and Y%. In blind auditions, women became slightly more likely to be hired than men. So what's your guess on this one? Blind applications, how much does it increase? 10, 50, 25, 75, 15, 20, 50, 60. Okay, let's take a look. 25 to 40%, 46%. So this particular study was done with orchestra auditions. And the thing with an orchestra is once you're in, you're kind of in until you don't want to be in anymore, unless, something happens to you. So the turnover is really slow. And I think that accounts for the 25 to 46%. All right, one more to guess. Number 4, without diverse leadership, women are blank, less likely than straight white men to win endorsement for their ideas. And this is also a fact. And yes, Alfred, these are from multiple sources, and I can get those to you later. 35, 46%, 50, 50, 75. And here's the answer, 20% less likely. So, yeah, and we're going to talk about this, about how ideas are talked over when you're not a straight white man. And Rebecca actually has some really interesting insight on that. And then the last one, I didn't have a guessing for this one, but white men are more likely to recognize their white privilege if they have experienced some sort of social disadvantage in the workplace. So they were poor, they had a disability, they were too young, too old, their sexual orientation, their religion, all those things affect whether or not you see your white privilege. As a side note, I did not see my white privilege until I was an adult. I didn't even know that there was such a thing. On this one, and this is, I apologize, the numbers are kind of small, but I want to bring your attention to the top line. This is a Lean In and McKinsey study about women in the workplace. And the top row, if you look at that, shows that 36% of all women have had their judgment questioned in their area of expertise, compared to 20% of men. And that figure is 40% for Black women and 37% for lesbian women. So, and then take a look at the fourth line, being mistaken for someone at a much lower level than you are at. And it shows 20% for women on average compared to 10% of men. And I actually have a little story about this from my only job that I ever had. I've been self-employed since 1985. But in 1982, I had a job. I was a writer-producer at Honeywell, and I was in charge of the engineering banquet. And the engineering banquet at the time, I mean, it had Honeywell is an engineering company, and their banquet was a big deal. Our budget was like almost $200,000, which in 1982 was a lot of money. So I had a meeting at that company. I had called the meeting, which was all engineers, all men. And I was wearing a name tag that day that said Tump, because I didn't have my It was in my other purse or something, but I didn't have my real badge, so I had my temp badge. And as people entered, I was checking them off on my list. And shortly before the last person entered, an engineer said, are you here to take notes? And just then the last person came into the meeting. And I said, no, I'm here to conduct the meeting. And we began the meeting. And that engineer who spoke to me committed what we would call an unintended microaggression. He didn't mean to hurt my feelings, I'm sure, but that's how microaggressions happen. So let's take a look at men and women. And this is in opposite sex marriages. So look at the difference. We're looking at 1972 to 2022. And note on the timeline that there was kind of a big jump between 1972 and 1982. So, that was, and what happened then, and here's a little bit of a timeline. In 1963, the Equal Pay Act was passed. In 1964, EEOC was created. 1969, no false divorce law was passed. 1972, Roe v. Wade. 1974, Fair Housing Act was amended to prohibit the discrimination according to sex, race, color, religion, national origin. And SCOTUS ruled, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that you can't fire a woman for being pregnant. That only happened in 74. 75, SCOTUS ruled that women could not be denied to serve on a jury. Before 75, you couldn't be on a jury because you were a woman. And in 1976, SCOTUS struck down a law that women needed spousal consent for an abortion. Somewhere in here was the credit card law. A lot of changes happened up to 82. And you can see how the split between what men and women in a cisgender marriage, how that changed. And today, we're calling 2022 today, 29% egalitarian. Wife sole or wife primary is now 16%. And it was what, 5% in 1972. And the husband is the sole breadwinner, went from 49% to 23%. So a lot of big changes happened between men and women within marriages. So here's gender parity. And this is, unfortunately, another guessing game. Fortunately. In 2002, what did US women earn per dollar for men? In 2002, what do you think women earned per dollar? Put your answers in the chat box. 2002, US women earned how much? 50, 78, 70, 45, 50, 23, 15. Okay. And keep in mind, this is like within the last, here's 2002. There it is in the middle of our chart. So where do you think it is? 80 cents. 80 cents. Oh, and somebody had a comment, women of color. This 80 cents combines white women and women of color. So this is all women, not just white women. But it's actually not hugely different. But I will show you what it is today. So today, US women, how much do they earn per dollar for men compared to men? What is it today? Answers in the chat box. What is it today? 87, 87, 79, 80, 80. Okay. 88. 82. Woohoo! So the 82 is combined women. So it is 70 cents for Black women, 83 cents for white women, and 93 cents for Asian women. So when you combine the 70, the 83, and the 93, overall, it is 82 cents per dollar. So if we keep up at this pace, how long do you think it's going to take for gender parity to be reached in terms of years? How many years? 35. Infinity. Yeah, it feels like it. I'll be dead. So will I. 100. 286 years if we continue at our current pace, which is not wonderful. Which brings me to this slide. So here's gender parity in terms of senior leadership and C-suite positions. And what this is a growth chart. So it's not a percentage chart. So it's not, in 2021, it's not 2% of all senior positions. It's a growth between 2020 and 2021. So you can see that as we go from 2006 up to 2022, each year it was increasing, but a lot of those years are really small, 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%. The really big year in 2021 was 2% for senior leadership and about 1% for C-suite positions. And then the really sad news is that in 2023, the C-suite positions showed a decrease. So yeah, so gender parity. And this for, we're not, I don't want to beat up on men here, but when women say, it's just not fair, this is what we're talking about. So men, 7 ways men can support equality for women at work. Here's the first one: challenge the likability penalty. So when you hear a woman, and this is like who I would want to have a beer with is sort of the standard here. So the likability penalty for women, they could be called bossy or shrill if they're just being, firm and why the drop in 2022? I don't know. We'll have to come back to that, Alfred. But anyway, did you know that women are more likely to receive feedback that they are intimidating, too aggressive, or bossy when they negotiate for a raise or a new position? Okay, evaluate performance fairly. And studies show this, and this comes once again from leanin.org and leanin.org. Evaluate performance fairly. Male performance is often overestimated compared to female performance, starting with mothers overestimating how the boys are crawling compared to how the girls are crawling when they do it. So make sure everyone on your team is aware of gender bias when they're evaluating performance. And then this relates to our previous 5 fast facts. Gender blind studies consistently show that removing gender from decisions improves women's chances of success. One study found that replacing a woman's name with a man's name on a resume improved the odds of getting hired by 61%. Recognize women. Number 3, recognize women and give them credit. This is, men typically attribute, and this is all typical, it's not everyone, their success to their innate qualities and skills and working hard and getting lucky as opposed to getting lucky or help from others. Women and men differ in that. Did you know that men will apply for jobs when they meet 60% of the hiring criteria, while women wait until they meet 100%. So men go, yeah, I could do that. And women say, ooh, I don't meet it all. I better just wait a little bit. Get the most out of meetings. Compared to women, men tend to talk more and make more suggestions in meetings compared to women, who are interrupted, given less credit for their ideas, and have less overall influence. Once again, this starts very early. It starts in school when girls get less airtime in a Zoom. They're interrupted more, even by well-intentioned teachers. It's just part of our innate bias. Did you know, in an 8-member team, 3 members will make 67% of the comments. In a 5-member team, 2 members will make 70% of the comments. So if you're a man and you're in a meeting, just take notes. I was on an international board for a while, and there was somebody in the meeting who always they had a bad habit. I'll just call it a bad habit. And every time they did the bad habit, I would just do a little check mark on my notes page. And it was amazing how many times it happened. So if you want to, if you have 2 check mark places in your meetings and you just have men and women and just go boop, 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 just do check marks. And you could test this out for yourself. And maybe if you're leading the meeting, you could say, well, we haven't heard from Chris lately. Chris, do you have anything to add? Yes, I do. Share office housework. So this is the office housework is like taking notes, organizing events, training the new hires, and yes, in fact, getting coffee. In a performance evaluation study, men who stayed late to help prepare for a meeting were rated 14% more favorably than women who did the exact same thing. When both men and women failed to help, the women were penalized with a 12% lower rating than the men. Make work for parents. In one study, 3 additional words on a resume, member of a PTA, made a woman 79% less likely to be hired, which, oh my goodness. And then plus, the fact that women have those, that baby making time that only, they have time out for maternity leave. My son-in-law got time off for maternity leave with my second grandchild, and that was unusual. He did not get that the first time. And then our last tip for men: mentor women and offer early access. Women typically receive less than high quality mentorship that will accelerate their careers. Men get more of that than women do. So, men, that's what you can do. I hope you do. Thank you. Women walking alone. This goes to just women in life. And women, I would like you to respond to this. If you have done, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things here. I personally have done 7 of these. Women, how many of these things have you done when you're walking alone? All of them. Yeah. The only one that I have not done, I've never carried mace or self-defense spray. Although I did for a while, I had a really loud whistle thing. A lot of them, all except 2. Yep. So women really do have a different view of not only their workspace, but life in general. I have a short story about this to tell. My first dog was half German Shepherd and half Malamute. And after I graduated from college, I was living with this dog, and I was single, and the only places that you could rent where you had a great big dog like that was in, kind of sketchy neighborhoods. So I was in a sketchy neighborhood, and it was a neighborhood that where I could walk along the rim of a park, and down in the park there was a pond, and my dog was under voice command, so I frequently would walk him off leash but heeling. But this was at night, and I had him I let him off the leash and I let him go down and explore in the pond. So he's down there exploring in the pond, and this car full of guys pulls up next to me. I'm on the sidewalk, they're on the street, and hey baby, yelling, kind of out the window. And I had been to a rape prevention class, so I knew what to do. You turn around and you walk the other way. So I did that. I turned around and I walked the other way. Well, what they did is they went down to the corner and then they turned around. So they are still going the same direction as I am. Well, we didn't cover that in rape prevention class. Like, what do you do if it doesn't work? And so I thought, do I turn around again? What do I do? And right then, the door opens and one of the guys gets out of the car and starts walking towards me. And I yelled for my dog, Noah! I yelled for him, and this half German Shepherd, half Malamute comes charging up out of the darkness, all the hair up on the back of his neck, teeth bared, chases the guy into his car. This was in the days before everybody had guns, so luckily they didn't shoot him. And they drove away. And I said, "Good boy, Noah, good boy." And went home, and I thought up a big bunch of hamburger for him and fed him and told him he was a good boy. So back to marriage age by state. This is Alaska is the one that is 14 years old. A girl can get married at 14. She can't vote, she can't drink, she can't smoke a cigarette, but she can get married. California, Delaware, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Mississippi, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Virginia do not have a minimum age at all, as long as there is parental consent. And some states have an age gap. 6 states don't allow somebody older than 21 to marry someone who is underage. So this is once again a little snapshot of how men and women are treated differently. So men and women, here's the continuum of gender. 0.5% of adults in the US identify as transgender or gender nonconforming. And here's look on the left, there's that big block of blue for cisgender men, big block of light blue for cisgender women. And then there's that little bitty part in the middle, transgender men, agender, genderqueer, non-binary. I would imagine two-spirit would go in there somewhere, transgender women. So it's this little, overall, it's a little bitty percent. It's big in our meeting today, big comparatively speaking. And thank you for coming. Hopefully everybody will learn something. So this was new to me. This is gay trans panic defense ban. So what this means, so a gay and trans panic defense are legal strategies which, to the American Bar Association, seek to partially or completely excuse crimes such as murder and assault on the grounds that the victim's sexual orientation or gender identity is to blame for the defendant's violent reaction. In other words, if I suspect that you are gay or transgender, just because I suspect that you are, I could shoot you. To me, it makes no sense. And these defenses are based on irrational fears and prejudice. to the LGBTQ community. And they imply that violence against LGBTQ people is acceptable or understandable under certain conditions. So the dark colored states are the states that prohibit the use of legal defenses, these legal defenses, and the light colored states, the state does not prohibit the use of a gay trans panic defense ban. 56% of LGBTQ population lives in states that do not prohibit the use of legal defenses, claiming that the victim's sexual orientation or gender identity contribute to the defendant's actions. And I am really sad that Minnesota is not on this list, Minnesota, my state. And Rebecca had an important point here when we were rehearsing. She said the absence of a ban doesn't mean that it can't happen. So here's my next offering. Anti-trans legislation risk. And here you'll see there's kind of, dark blue and light blue on the coast, and then Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and then a little pocket that's Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, and then that great swath of red. And then down there at the bottom is Florida. So the dark red states all have outlawed gender affirming care for trans youth, and many have implemented a range of discriminatory policies. These include the religious right to refuse treatment to transgender patients, bans on correct gender markers on birth certificates and driver's licenses, bans on drag that have led to the cancellation of pride events. I mean, there's just so much that is going on. And Florida is unique in being truly awful. And Rebecca will share a story of her traveling from a blue state to another blue state and what happened. Here is my state, gender justice in Minnesota. Minnesota Court of Appeals ruled that it is illegal to discriminate against transgender people in sports. And that is recent. And then they ruled, this is the Minnesota Court of Appeals, ruled that a pharmacist who refused to provide emergency contraceptives to a customer because of his personal beliefs, they ruled that he did engage in discrimination. That was in 2024. Mackenzie Scott, and she is the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos, who you may have heard of. And she just gave, she has a net worth of 40 billion. And she just gave a $2 million gift to Gender Justice Organization in Minnesota. And our last one is in September 2020, State Court of Appeals found that it is a violation of both the Minnesota Human Rights Act and the Minnesota Constitution for school districts to segregate transgender students from their peers in locker room facilities. And yeah, so what I would encourage you, this is Minnesota, but your own state has, has similar rulings that are either good or bad, but I encourage you to find out what's happening in your own state. I go to the gender justice meetings just as a participant to sit and listen, and I've learned a lot. And then we've got a little bit of data, and I'm taking too much time here. I'm sucking away time from Rebecca. So I'll go through this kind of quick. This is data results from our survey. Here you see that men, this is their view of management. They're at 19.56 on a scale of 5 to 25. Here are women at 18.85. And here are the non-binary third gender down at 16.78. So that's how the different demographics view management. And this is how those same demographics view their culture. Here's men again at the top, almost at the top. Asians are higher than Asian Americans. Here's women, 19.62. And here are our non-binary third gender people down at 17.75. So I'm gonna stop now. If you want more on what's going on and what we've learned since in our years of reporting, you can go to our website, Spectra Diversity under resources. There's an annual report. The one for 2023 looked at industries. The one for 2022 looked at intersectionality. So I hope you would do that. And so, sorry, Rebecca, I took up too much time. I'm really sorry.
Oh, it's par for the course for you, Chris.
It is. I'm a talker. Yeah, Rebecca and I get on the phone and we go, okay, I just got 5 minutes. And then, 40 minutes later. So our little history, Rebecca and I think you're gonna talk about this in
Yep.
2016, 17, and 19. Go ahead, Rebecca, and welcome.
So hi everybody. Thank you for taking your time today. The history with Chris and I is I became her development vendor before I actually came out to anybody. So when she hired me, I was, as far as anybody knew, a straight white man
With a beard.
with a beard, an epic beard, by the way, which is very common in a lot of transgender women's transitions. The epic beard before. Um, in 2017, just as we were building the Spectra thing, I think we launched a few months after. I think was it May or April of 2017 that we really launched. Um, I After a lifetime of knowing what was going on with me, not being able to say anything, having come out 5 times in my lifetime to people, getting rejected, I hit that breaking point that a lot of trans people do, and I did attempt. I changed my mind, and luckily, the changing my mind stuck. That is also one of the importance of the symbol of the semicolon in the mental health stories, is because my story wasn't done yet. It needed to continue. And so 2017, I came out to everybody, including the people that I'd already come out to that I kind of gotten rejected by, but for years, um, it was that or not being around anymore. And so it would have been like a stop of Spectra's work as well. But it was a couple of really tumultuous years. It was 2017 was more about clients and really close family and friends. 2018 was social, the wider circle of family. Also the tumultuous, like, coming out on Facebook kind of thing, where you just literally lose friends, you lose family, you lose connections, you gain some people, but it is almost never a net positive as far as your circle of people goes. In 2018 as well, because it was a very bad spiral. It was part of my life that I had been in this industry for 20 years, nearly 20 years at that point. And suddenly I couldn't do it anymore. One of the reasons was my crutch to deal with the dysmorphia, the gender dysphoria, all of that was work. I was a workaholic. A number of other people in the queer community, when they're dealing with coming out or prior to coming out, they have other crutches: drugs, risky behavior, alcohol, what have you. Mine happened to be work. And so that got put on the very priority of, do I continue to be a workaholic after this because I'm trying to find myself? That led to Chris and I actually having a conversation with Chris, being like, I need you to find another dev because I can't do this anymore. Fast forward to 2019, she asked if I could continue doing stuff with her again because she was not having a great experience. And the little story we have in the notes here is that within a couple of weeks of me starting work back up in 2019 with her, I fixed a bug that would have deleted all of her data that the other developer had put in place that luckily had not been triggered. So that's kind of a quick history between Chris and I. There's a lot more in there. But that's kind of where we go. And that's the importance of the semicolon. I do have a semicolon on my wall right here. I have one downstairs. I just haven't gotten the tattoo yet that you'll see in a lot of people, but it is a symbol for mental health, depression, and overcoming.
This is, and I talked to Rebecca about this quite frequently, but especially since she has the unique experience of presenting as a man and now as a woman. And she's noticed some things that are different.
It's the first thing since in 2017 when I came out, it was really just digital. Like my digital identity started to we're starting to get updated. And as a result, when I was working with clients and working with our vendors on tech support, why is stuff happening, I immediately, as soon as I changed my email, started getting pushback on factual presentations of tech issues. I had to start submitting screenshots that I hadn't had to submit before, starting to submit logs, having to prove over a time, not getting things solved in the first one. That was just within the first 3 months of changing just my email. It was just that name, that feminine presenting, a feminine typical name up front that I started getting pushback. That has not changed. But what has changed is that I just start submitting that stuff by default now. I just make sure I have all of my little ducks in a row before I actually go ask somebody. What's also changed is that I just don't ask a lot anymore. I just try to take care of it myself because it's not worth it half the time. Luckily for me, I did not lose any clients that I had existing. There was also that crossover of me actually giving up clients and having them go to other devs. But any clients that I wanted to keep that it came back to me, nobody left. And my business is all about, I do all the dev work, but I have to do a lot of sales. I have to do a lot of convincing. I have to do a lot of relational, just like I get what your problem is. That has become a little harder. I don't have anything to quantify it, but it feels harder a lot of times to get those points across.
And are you talked over? Do you notice you're talked over more than before?
Less so now than when I first came out, because now I kind of have that confidence of like, I know what the hell I'm talking about and you should be quiet kind of approach. Like there are some lessons that I took on from having presented male for the first 37 years of my life. There are definitely, and in the tech industry that, I've been on that side of the coin. I feel bad about any of the transgressions that I might have done just based off my upbringing and how it just was. I hate it, but I also have taken lessons from it, and some really close friends that have asked me for career advice in the past, I've just been like, look, just talk, just apply for the jobs, just, ask for what you want. And the worst they can say is no and give you less, but you're still going to make more. I had one of my former employees, she was going to go into a job and ask for, I think she was going to ask for just over what I was paying her when I had to lay her off. And I told her, I'm like, no, ask for 90, not 65. And so she did, and she got 85. She would have gotten 70. She would have gotten 75. I mean, it was that one tip for her meant a lot of money was not being left on the table. And it was purely down to confidence and how she didn't want to lose the opportunity by asking for too much when any of her male presenting peers would have just asked for 90, 100K. They would have just asked for what the top range was on that job thing.
And can you talk about the Wemixon?
the it's been a while since I've seen one of these, but in the wild, there was a while where where organizations were trying to create kind of safe spaces, feminine presenting spaces to talk about career, to talk about, networking sessions. And they really thought they were being inclusive by adding an X to women. What it really did was make me feel other. Uh, it, I'm only being accepted here because they have an X in the word women, not because I identify and present as a woman, but because they're making the point. Um, and so it's a term that isn't really all that used much anymore, but it is. As soon as I ever see that, I don't feel safe going to that networking event. This is a me thing as well. There's a lot of opinion in this statement, but it's an immediate identifier for like, well, maybe I'm not going to be okay there. Um, Chris got the opportunity to be at my name change ceremony in 2018. There's Chris, and I'm much taller than her, standing right behind her.
Which was my first statement because we had known each other for years, but only through Zoom. And my first comment when I saw her was, "Oh my God, you're so tall."
Yeah. The name change ceremony was it was you have to have, I think it's 2 or 3 witnesses when you change your name in Minnesota. It's mostly for that you're not trying to commit fraud, and so these people that are coming and being your witnesses are just saying like, yeah, this is who she is. She's not trying to commit fraud. She's not trying to get out of anything. I had put out an ask to be like, who wants to be a witness at court for me? And these are the people that responded. All dear friends. There's a former employer in there, good friends, former coworkers, other people that are transitioning, and former employees in there as well, an event and a client. So I had the breadth of my community there. As far as like the dead naming goes, for those of you that have gotten married and chosen to change your last name, how many years you've gotten your quote unquote maiden name addressed to in mailers and everything. None of that is obviously hurtful or meant as hurtful. It's just what the marketing department still has. But there's a really weird difference between when I'm going to use a typical gender example in this one, but when a woman walks into an office after getting married and having changed her name, uh, they're very quick. People are very quick to be like, let's change your email. Let's get you here. If somebody in a room calls them out by their old last name, they're fairly quickly corrected by other people, and then it doesn't really happen again. As far as legal documents go, probably about 20 minutes after this picture was taken, I headed down to the DMV that's in the basement of the courthouse that I had this in, and I got my papers updated. The Chris has on here to tell the airport story. This is part of the DMV change because in Minnesota, at least, when you change your ID, you don't get an ID immediately. You get a little clip on your ID, and you get a packet of yellow papers. That's like, this is this is changed. This is why your ID is docked. About a month after this, I had taken on a job at a nonprofit in St. Louis, Missouri, as the VP of tech, and I had to fly. Flying with yellows sucks. But my new ID hadn't come back yet. I didn't know that you could do the quick return one. But getting from Minneapolis to St. Louis was easy. They just saw the yellows, they looked it up, they're like, okay, you're good to go. Flying back from St. Louis, I approached the gate. I approached the TSA agent that was checking the what do you call it? Your ticket, checking your ticket to make sure that you are who's getting on the plane. I explained what the yellows were, and he immediately said, "This is not you," and pressed a button that called over his supervisor, Supervisor agreed that was not me. And in very short order, I hadn't even gotten to the security lines yet. I was still in that like buffer to get to the security lines. I was ushered by 6 people with automatic weapons over to the side while they could verify that my papers were correct. Now, I was wearing the dress that I'm wearing in that picture. I think I was wearing that outfit on my way back, which was a horrible mistake. I know that now, just from comfort, but I had to pee. It was cold. I was standing in a circle of 6 National Guardsmen with automatic rifles. And I didn't know that I was going to get home that day. I didn't know what was going to happen. As it ended up, they had to call the Minnesota courts. I think it was a Sunday, so they had to deal with like the after hours people. They had to deal with, I don't know, somebody in there, but somehow I got cleared. They gave me a little tram to go to my gate because I was almost going to miss it. I got home and I haven't flown since, and that was 2019. Um, the it was scary because I had the big beard and everything on my ID. Very short after that, I found out that, oh, hey, I can get a express one. I wish somebody would have told me because I would have paid the $20 to avoid all of that. That's just that's the difference between people in kind of Minnesota versus people in like Missouri as that example. It probably very easily could have happened in the Minneapolis one as well. However, there's a lot bigger of a community in Minneapolis than there necessarily is in St. Louis, and they definitely have state things in place.
This is a comment. I've gotten this question more than once from people that know that I work in the DEI space. You know, that when you transition, you know, you need to get all the surgeries and your sexual orientation changes. Can you explain?
So we'll get to the medical stuff in the next slide, it looks like, but for this one, the difference between sexual orientation and sexual orientation and gender identity is sexual orientation is who you love and gender identity is who you are. Now the thing that you're going to see with a lot of people, especially in the transgender community that come out, is when they come out, they are trying to discover who they are as a person. And this might have meant, repressed feelings throughout life of actually being attracted to a specific gender that they may not have been able to be attracted to before they came out. There's a lot of self journey and self discovery in here in regards to that. But the biggest thing is sexual orientation is who you love and gender identity is who you are.
Okay. And this is the one that, I'm sorry, I kind of got ahead of myself here. People think that, you know, when you do it, you have to go, the whole tamale, you have to do everything. And there's a big range and there's also costs involved.
There's decisions, there's therapy, there's medical opinions, and personal choice is very large in this as well. Honestly, the surgical or the medical / surgical transition is a very private conversation between you and your doctor, maybe extends to a spouse or partner. Maybe it even extends with your therapist. But transitions are your own. Whatever you choose as your transition path is okay. There's not such a thing as trans enough. And that's what a lot of, even within sometimes the trans community, there are arguments over, are you trans enough to be trans? Medical transition, if in somebody's opinion, unless you have had your surgeries, you aren't trans enough. That's kind of a thing that we're talking about in the community right now called transmedicalism. With the legislative bills around the country talking about youth trans care bans, they're talking about using sex hormones, estrogen, testosterone therapy for younger kids and stuff like that. It's literally not within until they normally would get exposed to their own body's production of those hormones that even those are being considered. So any kid prior to puberty is purely social transitioning. It's just social. There's nothing but therapy and time and parenting, and the kid being allowed to be who they are. And that's where we really get into some of the trans medical stuff is where all of the legislative stuff is right now. It's where all the arguments are, it's where all the opinions are, and it's a really tough place to live at.
And part of me just does not understand that. It's like, why is it anybody's business? I just don't get it.
It was really, and I'll point this one out, Chris, and I hope that you don't get super embarrassed about this, but I'm going to use it.
Go ahead.
Shortly, I think you know what I'm going to say. Shortly after I came out and started hormone therapy, Chris asked me, "So when does your voice change?"
Oh, yeah.
And, and it was a valid question. She didn't mean anything by it. Transgender women who have transitioned or started therapy after their voice changed, going through a testosterone fueled puberty, their voices do not change. They stay low. Everything drops. It stays dropped. Transgender men will experience this. Some of them, to different extents, will experience the same drop in voice as well, but the voice does not go back up. There are therapies, there are surgeries. The surgeries involve not talking for a month, and when you're in a sales position, that doesn't really work out so well. I still go back and forth on it. It's really hard sometimes to be at drive-throughs or on the phone, but honestly, I'm becoming more and more okay with just whatever is happening with my voice. I do have a drive-through voice and I do have a phone voice, but they that's just what you do to survive in some situations. Now, she brought up this urban versus rural exposure, and this is also, I do have I'm outside of the Twin Cities metropolitan area voice. Usually that just means not talking. My kids, because of
And we didn't say, excuse me, we never mentioned this, that you were married and you have 2 children.
I was just about to get to all of that.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. So my co-parent, some people would say ex or whatever. I use co-parent. We tried. We went to groups together. She didn't know anything about what was going on with me behind the scenes because nobody did. I hid it very, very well. But we tried. Absolutely a mutual separation and divorce, and that is not typical. But because of the support community around it, she ended up moving outside of the Twin Cities metro area to where her family was at, like her sisters and parents and stuff, so that she could have the support community for the kids. Because I was going through my transition, I was also going through a lot of mental health stuff, and it made sense at the time. Chris, you're over it. Thank you. The my kids are now in 6th and 4th grade. My 6th grader last December had his first band concert, and he plays trumpet. Did you change this to be a trumpet? Anyways.
No, it was always a trumpet, okay. But it's a girl.
But my oldest had his first band concert in December at this relatively large school, but it's all rural. And after the 6th grade portion, we all get shepherded into the hallway, and then parents go collect their kids from this other side of the hallway. My co-parent and my youngest went back to my co-parent's place because we were going to get ice cream after the concert and everything. I went through the crowd to go get my oldest. I was told twice on the way, maybe 40 feet, 50 feet between the sides. At first, the voice came from behind me: pedophiles are not welcome here. I'm 6'4". I also don't tend to get misgendered a lot unless my mouth is open, but I don't really care. Anyways, there was no, I was just walking. And then as I got closer to where I go get my son, somebody in front of me told me that I wasn't welcome here because pedos are dangerous. The fact that the pedophile thing has leaked its way into my 6th grade kids band concert, it scared the shit out of me. That was the only time I've ever had to be on a drive back to Minneapolis from 45 minutes north with my therapist on the phone, just to make sure that I could get home before completely breaking down personally. That night was not supposed to be about me. It was supposed to be about my kid. It was about my kid. I was super proud of him. I still am. He has another band concert coming up in 3 weeks that I'm definitely going to go to, but I won't be the one going to get him after. It still scares me, like thinking about it, going through that. And I was 45 minutes away from a community that I've never had any of that kind of issues in. I've never had that kind of psychological fear within Minneapolis.
Well, that's the rural and urban versus urban, and we're a blue state. You know, I can't imagine what it's like in a red state.
And I grew up on the west side of Minnesota. I won't visit my hometown. Like it's extremely quote unquote red over in that area, and I just won't go visit. My dad still lives out there, and he says you should bring the kids to visit. I'm like, no, there's no reason for me to drive out to that side of the state.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think that's yeah. We've had a couple of questions, but we are over time. So I tell you what, if you've got questions, why don't you've got my email from the webinar. Why don't you email your question to me and I will forward it to Rebecca. Why don't we do that? And I apologize for taking more than my half-hour allotment.
It's Chris, I have a little time if there are some people that want to hang out for a little while more, and I can answer some questions so that it's
let me give the book giveaway first.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
then we can hang out.
Okay.
Okay, so book giveaway must be present to win. Matt Bozung. Are you here, Matt? If you are, say yes in the chat. Where's my chat? There's my chat. Nope, Matt's not answering, so maybe Matt is not here. The next one, Blake McMorris. Blake, are you here? Blake is not answering. Let's see. Next. Weiss Garcia. Ann Johnson.
I see Weiss in the participant list or in the attendee list.
But they have to be, oh, Weiss, there. Okay, yay, Weiss. I will send you a note separately and get your postal address. Weiss. Okay, there's one. And then who did I just call after Weiss? I called Anne. Where'd she go? Let's see. Paula Young, are you here? David Maida. People are bailing now. I'm so sorry. Tamara Russell. Kimara Hobbs. Valerie Smith. Valerie is winner number 2. And thank you, everyone. I know that people have to bail. But as Rebecca said, she is willing to stay for a few minutes more. If you would like to let's see, we did have a chat question. Okay, I know it's a loaded question, but I'm very passionate about LGBTQ inclusion and how I can potentially support initiatives. That's for you,
Um,
Rebecca.
should I look in the Q&A for that one?
No, it's in the chat.
Oh, it's in the chat. I need to read that one before I answer it.
Okay, it's the last one that came in the chat.
Oh, but I'm very passionate about Monica, as an ally, really, it's just about it's about showing up. Um, it's finding out what initiatives are trying to be accomplished and supporting the people that are trying to push them through, whether it's local politicians or just groups in the area trying to accomplish something. It's the biggest thing you can do is show up.
What about, and this was from early on, Christina asked, looking back on your experience, what would you change, if anything, about how you came out or transitioned?
I don't have any regrets, mostly because I'm still around. It's I have two amazing kids, and an amazing relationship with my co-parent. Um, and I wouldn't have had any of that had I come out fully in fifth grade, seventh grade, ninth grade, senior year, 23 years old. My life would have been a lot different, not necessarily saying worse or better. I like the life I have now. I did absolutely 100% use the privilege that I was given as a straight white man, presenting person, to be in the position that I'm in. I got through the job stuff that Chris had talked about earlier in the presentation. I got to come in with zero experience to get into the position that I'm in now. I know that that was a privilege, and I don't try to squander that. I don't think I'd change anything. Every decision made was made with the information I had at the time. Um, and I'm here right now, so I guess it was successful to some extent.
Well, your kids. I love your kids. They're delightful. And I'm looking forward to another 4th of July fireworks on my pond.
You really have the best view. I
Oh,
mean,
best view ever.
yeah,
Best view ever.
so good.
And we are, if there's no more questions, we could take one more, but otherwise people are kind of bailing.
Yep.
Which I thank you for staying longer. And thank you, Rebecca, for sharing, for being courageous and sharing your story. I'm
Thank you
so
for
glad I
inviting
know you.
me. I'll talk to you soon. And thank you
Okay,
everybody for coming.
okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.